All right.
Okay.
Interesting. What hostels can lead into.
Yeah.
All right. So time for Worldwide interviews number 3. I'm joined today by my friend Owen from
Revelstoke, British Columbia, Canada.
Yeah, sweet. And we met at a hostel here in Picton on the South Island of New Zealand. We didn't really talk on the hostel. We met you like outside of the street actually. It's a bit fun. Like we were walking around you.
Yeah, I think I arrived maybe like an hour earlier, and then I was just running around and recognized a couple faces, and then turned around like, hey, you guys from Tombstone? Yeah,
it's hilarious. Okay, so if we just jump straight into it a little bit, like, so you come from Canada.
Yeah.
And how long have you been in New Zealand?
I think about 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
Maybe just under.
And what's like the main thing that brought you to New Zealand? Is there any specific reason that you came just to New Zealand?
I think a few years ago in high school, since I'm only 18, I graduated maybe 7 months ago.
Yeah.
And I was just feeling quite trapped in my small little town, and just really felt like intuitively I was driven to, go and explore and have new things, connect with new people. And I just wasn't really feeling ready, like most of the other school kind of, guiding you in the direction of what do you want to do for the rest of your life. And I just wasn't really sure. And so it just felt more right to travel. And then, graduated high school and just put my head down, worked, save up money. And then New Zealand felt like the right place to go. I've got some family here, had family travel here. So a little bit of background that kind of connected me here.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And I'm also a little bit inspired by the fact that you're only 18, because a lot of the people after you graduate, they try to sort of push you in the path and maybe continue studying or do something, continue focus on your career. But like we all have different lives and we all have different ways how we want to live our life. Which like it reminds me a little bit of how I was when I was, because I moved to Australia when I was 22 years older.
Yeah,
but
okay.
Similar in like the sort of the urge to feel like, you want to explore and see more stuff before you sort of decide to follow maybe the path that other people in our age tend to do.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of pressure to be following that path. But there was just like this kind of discomfort surrounding it. Like, oh, this doesn't really feel right. Yeah.
So after, you haven't been here for super long, but does it feel that it was the right decision to go specifically to New Zealand now? Like, have you had any cool experiences so far?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's been kind of like on and off. And I guess I've dealt with a lot of ups and downs through life. And I guess ups and downs in the way of like, almost like a pulsing of my heart and my mind of opening and then closing again. And I found while traveling that that's still the case. Like it's not going to be a vacation away from my feelings or vacation away from the struggle. But it does seem like it's kind of been like a higher frequency, like, I'll have a couple days that I just need to rest, and then, I'll be able to rejuvenate my energy and then open my heart again. And when I do, it seems that it's just so often that other people are kind of gravitated towards that, or the giving, receiving, reciprocal, universal language, I guess. And so I've met a lot of people that way, and smaller conversations, deeper conversations, and it's been really fulfilling, knowing that one of my fears coming here was like, am I going to fit in, or how is this going to go, or all the thoughts that are trying to convince you to not go, or is this the right thing? And then there's been a lot of I guess reassuring aspects with connecting with people and the nature here. And I guess to answer your question, it's been very fulfilling so far. Yeah.
I'm really, really glad to hear that. And it's like you say yourself, and like, I also believe in the fact that we talked about before as well, like when it comes to energies and stuff like that, like you attract what you sort of give as well. So if you send out positive energy and happiness and laughter, that's something that you will attract as well. Meanwhile, if you have like the shield or like guard up, you will maybe be more stuck in that sort of, I don't know, less happy and less attractive mindset or energy thing.
Yeah. Or like a certain channel.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we can feel the vibrations and stuff like that. They can feel when someone is in a certain way.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so you've been here 2 weeks. You've had a lot of, I don't know how many, but hopefully a lot of cool things happening already.
Yeah.
And what's your next step in New Zealand? What's your next chapter to go on?
Next chapter,
Or like
well,
next
a
trip?
very mini chapter is just
Yeah.
a couple nights here at the hostel,
Yeah.
which is kind of my first time really traveling alone and not being able to rely on family, which I have been the past, I guess, 2 weeks now. Yeah, the next chapter is Outward Bound, which is an outdoor education program that I'm going to for 21 days. And then that'll be kind of, I guess, focused on, team building exercises and a lot of surrounding around nature and not having, phones or books or any distractions like that. And I guess that's my next chapter, which I'm not really sure what it's going to look like, but I imagine that I'll be, testing a lot of physical, mental, emotional comfort zones and trying to push them.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. That sounds like something that I would like consider doing myself as well. Like I would probably feel that, because I'm not really sure how you are as a human being or as a person, but I really enjoy when you're like a big group of people, like, and everybody's like a family vibe, like almost like we had yesterday when we were like out, everybody was just vibing and everybody is getting to know each other.
Yeah.
And I also think it's really like well needed in the like society nowadays, like, to just go a little bit off grid and just, get away from all the stress and all the social media and all the stress, scrolling and looking at what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
I think this is something that, a lot of more, like much more people should do. And I think we also really need to do that.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we'll just continue to compare. And like, I think a spot like that or like an environment and people that come to that sort of place hopefully are aware of the fact that they might need it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so, and that was a big motivation for it. It's like you're spending, to be fair, a shitload of money just for 21 days, and it's ages 18 to 26, so people that may be very consumed, like for myself, I've dealt with a lot of addiction to my phone, and you're deliberately giving that up and realizing like that's something that you're just not going to have. And so I think either subconsciously or consciously, that you're going to be, brought up against some fears or having some fears prior and then having to push through them. So that's what I'm really excited for, is to be, around a group of people that are all trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Either maybe that's like breaking old patterns or just creating new ones with other people. And that's something that, like as many people today, I've really lacked in having that kind of genuine connection, especially throughout high school. One of the reasons why I needed to travel. And it just feels like a perfect opportunity to make that connection.
Yeah, it's also it's also cool to do that, like, when you're coming overseas to a country where hopefully a lot of the people have like not so much knowledge about the country. Like, you're coming to a spot, like, like you meet at a spot, you have the same sort of interest and mindset, and then you just, I think that's something that makes it all easier to flow with, like, to flow as a group.
Yeah.
But I have like a question that's not really about traveling, but like a side note thing when it comes to social media and stuff like that. So if the world would like, go offline tomorrow, like would you do anything different to how you're doing things nowadays? Like would there be like anything that you'd be like, I'm just going to go out and do this straight away because now I don't need to worry about being on my phone all the time, because I feel that myself sometimes that if I hadn't been on my phone and watching TV, I would probably be out in nature more. I will be doing more biking, I will be more exercising, hiking, whatever, But that's something that sometimes is holding you back, even though you are aware that you can not do it, like you can just put your phone away.
Yeah, totally.
So is there anything that you think you would have done differently if that would happen?
I think generally the direction that I'm heading would stay the same, or is like I'm moving towards, even though that I have my phone and I still, am using it, I am heading towards a direction of doing yoga more often or meditation and grounding myself more often. But of course, in those times that I don't feel as motivated, then I'll pull out my phone and watch some videos. So I guess if I didn't have access to my phone or access to internet, then it would be more like full-on dedicated, okay, I'm going to go meditate for an hour or something, rather than kind of just going with the flow, knowing or having the security of like, I'll always have this comfort of escaping. So I don't know exactly specifically if I would have anything right away like, oh, I'm going to go do this, or like, oh, I'm going to go do this. And more of just, I guess, really grounding down and entering the moment. But it would really also depend on, you know, other people and like what's the circumstances of that shutdown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for answering. I think that's really, it's really a tricky question, because someone asked me that one as well, and I was like, oh, that's a really tough one, because I haven't really thought about it, because everything is, you know, developing so quickly, and everything is just getting more and more convenient and comfortable. And I was like, you know, I sort of miss the old days sometimes, where things were more easy. Of course, you're younger than me, so you have, like, you know, a little bit less experience when it comes to the time where I grew up, like in 1995. It's what is it, like a 12-year gap between you and I? So it's quite a big difference. But
yeah, I was just thinking that as well.
Yeah. But okay, so we talked a little bit about that as well. Like you mentioned it yourself, you know, when it comes to, what was it? I forgot it. I forgot it totally. But yeah, you talked about it, like so when you're traveling and you're sort of, you know, being more exposed to your feelings, like we talked about at breakfast as well. Like, you know, when you come to a country like back home in Canada or in Sweden, in my case, you have some sort of safety net. Like, you know, you have people that hopefully you can rely on, that can help you through times, and you may be exposed to your feelings, but you have other ways to deal with it.
Yeah.
Is that something that you have felt or think will be something that will improve your strength when it comes to managing your stuff by yourself?
Completely.
When you're overseas?
Yeah. Like as you say, if I was home and I was having a tough week, I could rely on my mom, or I could rely on my friends, or, you know, this certain spot along a river that I walk on, I could just go there. And like that's I guess how I would explain a sense of home. But yeah, that's just not something that I have now. So I guess I've already found that I'm having to dig a little deeper to find that sense of home, knowing that nature is everywhere. And, you know, it's always going to have that connection, but it's just like the familiarity to your mind, I think, is the extra level of comfort within emotion, or within that place of feeling, I guess, closed. And got off track there.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah.
We're human beings, you know, like this is not like we're doing I don't know, like a massive TV show interview. This is more like, you know, us flowing, having a conversation and talking about life. Yeah. Relax and chill, you know, so it's fine.
Yeah. So I guess already I would say that there have been a lot of emotions that have been coming up, and I guess that, you know, coming up and down, it's just been the resistance of those emotions. And so I can acknowledge and recognize that they are coming up, but it's still working on being able to allow them to flow, even though I don't have that familiarity of knowing that I can, with having that net, as you say. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. It's something that I would probably, like, you know, say to everyone that's back home or wherever they are in their comfort and their, you know, safety net, that they sort of need to experience it themselves. Like, I'm not sure how much you have traveled before New Zealand, but I've moved overseas 3 times in total now. So I'm quite used to the exposure, like, you know, being by yourself and sort of need to manage everything alone. And meanwhile, people back home, they may not really understand what it actually takes from us, especially if we're traveling, like, you know, constantly moving. I think that's something that's also quite a big stress, especially for the nervous system. And, like, you know, because you're always, you know, always moving, you never really have a safe spot where you can just go back and recharge. You're like, you know, because going to a new hostel, meeting new people, being social, draining your energy, and then you need to recharge. And you're coming to like this dorm and you have like 6 people chatting. You're like, you can't really have that sort of, you know, like recharge spot. Yeah. How would you like, how are you planning to sort of deal with that if you're going to be, you know, moving around a little bit? Do you have any ideas of how you will sort that out?
Yeah, I think the certain constants that I can still hold from being home, I guess, would be the coping mechanisms that I've learned, whether that be journaling, meditating, being in nature, or, you know, something along those lines. So I guess just really relying on those and trying to develop my connection with those to be able to create that sense of home, without it needing to be, a physical place, but rather an emotional one. And I feel like I've done a lot of work to be able to really strengthen that connection and be able to get there quicker. But still, I guess just taking the time or, allowing myself to recognize when I am needing that and going out and doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, it's important, that we recharge our batteries.
Yeah.
And it's important that we remind ourselves that, we're human beings and we're not always going to be at the highest level of energy and happiness and, gratitude and stuff like that. Because that was actually something that me and the other guy that I'm traveling with, Johnny, we talked about yesterday when we were driving here, that, we sometimes, at least from my perspective, it feels like sometimes I can't really be comfortable with how my energy is. So let's say that you and I are going on a road trip and I feel like I'm really low today. I'm really exhausted and not social. Then I, most of the time, will feel like I need to be social, I need to be happy, but I don't have the energy to it or for it. Instead of just embracing like, okay, well, this is okay. I'm feeling like this and I don't need to change it.
Yeah.
I don't need to adjust it to fit for someone else's energy today.
Yeah.
Is that something that do you have any like reflections regarding that as well? Like,
totally.
do you
That's like one of the biggest ones.
Yeah.
For right now specifically.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I was staying in Wellington, and I guess maybe the third, fourth night I met a girl, and we kind of developed that relationship. And throughout that time with each other, I found that it was a very grounded and authentic and genuine most of the time, I guess maybe energetically, but also having the ups and downs. And there was a little bit of contrast between, what energy she would normally, I guess, function at and, a word just slipped off my tongue,
all right.
but compared to mine.
Yeah.
And so I guess I was just trying to process or recognize that there were some points where I would feel, not on the same energy level as her. And then I would have to, or try and, raise my energy in order to meet hers, but then that itself drained.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so that was kind of a tough balance, and brought up a lot of emotion and memories and reflections on, my past and like, why is it that I don't feel comfortable expressing like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm just feeling low.
Yeah.
Like I would try I would observe myself, try to subtly communicate that rather than like saying it, very blunt, or not blunt, but transparent, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it does come with that people-pleasing nature of, if you're a kid and you're feeling some sort of way and your parent tells you, maybe not specifically in my case, but for an example, like, oh, stop that, or like, stop acting like that.
Yeah.
And you're kind of forced to, try and comply to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think maybe it's just that being conditioned to that nature of living, where that is still restricting me in some ways and being able to do it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the difference is, I think that my observational self has a lot more strength, and I guess the system, or my nervous system, has allowed it to kind of sit in that room, and to just like sit and observe. And so I find that I can observe when that's affecting me now.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but most times now I can just recognize like, oh, that's happening, and I like to think it's like a thought trail,
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different thought trails, and sometimes, I'll have one and notice it, but then later in the day, or when I get that time to like think back on my thoughts, sometimes I don't pull it up,
Yeah. I'm just watching now, so we will have a little break, and we will get back into the interview in a couple of minutes.
Cool.
Thank you so much for now.
Of course, yeah. Yeah.
All right. Back to questions. Questions sounds really awkward, but back to the interview instead. Mm-hmm. So, one thing that I'm really curious about is, is there any specific countries that you would like to experience? And if there is, what is it that you would like to experience within these countries?
Mm-hmm. I think it's less specific countries that I would like to experience and more the experience of traveling. And so I guess I haven't taken the time to really focus on like looking up a country to where would be most likely to have that experience. And I think it's a little difficult too to look up a country, say like Thailand, and then just see all the huge tourist spots, and like, you know, it's hard to feel that gravitation. But the experience, I guess, would be to learn a lot about myself, and to be pushing my comfort zones, and, you know, learn how to connect with that emotional self or that intuitive self or inner child or whatever you want to call it, and to strengthen that relationship. And I think one of the ways that I find that I can do that is with other people, and connection with other people, and connection with nature. So I guess just those are the denominators. The common denominators is people and nature, and I think that's everywhere really. So,
do you have like any spot in the world where you've seen like, okay, I don't know, footage or videos of something that's shown like, okay, well, that sort of nature then is something that I would like to explore. You know, like the Amazon or whatever it may be, like, you know, Antarctica, whatever, you know, like, is there anything like that that you have seen that has inspired you to sort of get into nature more as well?
Yeah. Yeah, along the line, I've looked at Workaway, which is like a work to stay kind of website.
Yeah.
And I looked into this Buddhist village in Thailand. And so I guess in the previous conversation of like, if I didn't have technology or something, that would be kind of a place to nurture that connection with myself, is like dedicating a couple weeks or maybe a month to just like sitting with my thoughts, learning from people that have been doing it for most of their lives or however long.
Like monks.
And and to really, I guess, again, the people and the nature, to really dedicate myself in that.
Yeah, that's really inspiring as well. Like I watched, or I read a book about a Swedish guy. He was a monk in Thailand for, I think it was like 17, 20 years. And it's interesting that these people have such a strong like mind game that they can just sit with their self without speaking for like such a long time.
Yeah.
And it seems like, you know, I think it's really cool that they cannot own anything. Like, you know, you got to like give away everything you have and just embrace the fact, like, you know, I'm giving myself into this, and hopefully that will result in something positive.
Yeah. That makes me think of, I forget her name, but the Israeli that burned her van. And it's like kind of gave away all of her materialism and still has herself. And so I wonder if that would, or has or will strengthen connection with herself, because now she doesn't have any of the materialistic.
I think so. Like, I've come to realize through the time in New Zealand, especially, like, you know, in my eyes, it seems like a lot of people, they don't really care too much about the materialistic stuff. They seem to be more like caring about like having a good life and a peaceful life.
Yeah.
And going back to a little bit of the previous topics, like, you know, when it comes to a modern society, it feels like so much of the stuff that we have, we don't really need. We can just like give it away, we can get rid of it because it's not really adding any value.
Yeah.
It's just making us work less for more. You know, like, you know, instead of the old days when you were working a lot for something small, now you're doing something small and you get a lot on your plate. Almost like any specific aspect, you know?
Yeah.
So I have been inspired by that as well. Like, even though I have my car full with stuff, I just feel more and more that I don't really want it, and I don't really need all this stuff. It's hard when you're like doing, you know, like photos and videos and stuff like that, because then you need to have some sort of technology to be able to upload it, and if you want to share it with someone else or keep it for yourself, whatever the case may be. But other ways, I just feel like, you know, you don't need to have 5 t-shirts of different colors of white. You don't have to have 3 pair of jeans. You can have 1 pair of jeans, whatever it may be. You know, like, we're just consuming so much stuff, and it's affecting so much more stuff that we can actually see ourselves. Yeah. Like the nature, like, you know, everything is just being affected. Yeah. The environment, and
so I think the monks are kind of referencing an earlier conversation as like a lot of that nature of being, and I'm not too educated, so I could be totally wrong, but I think my, I guess, observation is a lot of it is like to do with inside and kind of just sitting with yourself, no matter what color t-shirt you're wearing, and kind of figuring out the colors inside or what's happening inside, and then yeah, I guess society teaching us like you got to look a certain way or do a certain way or this is success, is like it's just distracting you from being able to reach that spot inside. And yeah, and that really resonates with me because I brought a lot of stuff on this trip. I mean, partly because of Outward Bound, it requires a lot of different clothing, but I've brought a lot of extra shit, and I'm realizing now that like I don't need so much of this stuff. Like I've only wore like maybe, I don't know, 10% of what I brought already, and like I can just cycle through that. Yeah. And so that's a goal of mine. After Outward Bound, I want to leave or ship a bunch of my shit out and get a new backpack and just like, you know, just have one backpack instead of the 2 bags that I have now. Yeah.
And it's interesting as well, like, you know, because you see a lot of the people that's doing like these massive hikes throughout the entire New Zealand, they come like with a small backpack and they're walking through the like entire island. Meanwhile, I come with car and I have like 10 times more stuff than they have, and I'm just driving, you know, like everything is so comfortable. So I think that's sort of putting the perspective on like what do you actually need. What's your essentials? So like, you know, how much stuff do you actually need to bring for all these small things? And when it comes to traveling and packing, I always packed way too much stuff. Because I'm like, okay, well, what if I would need that? Well, in worst case, you will just don't have it, or you can, worst case, get a new one. You know, like it's not the end of the world. But yeah, would you say that, like, that's something that you will, you told me about when it comes to traveling here, but is that something that you will probably adapt to, adjust, what do you call it, like apply to if you go to further travels as well? Like, you know, if you go to Thailand, whatever, would you probably travel lighter then as well?
I think so. Yeah. And as I travel, I think I'll start to learn of like what are the actual needs that I really do need. Because I think, again, within our culture, we're being programmed or taught in so many ways what our needs are rather than actually finding them ourselves.
Exactly.
And like, say a few hundred years ago or thousands of years ago, like needs would have been completely different, but the needs would be actually based on like, you know, reason, or like, oh, I need this because I need to get food tonight or whatever. But now it's just like needs onto, like what are you wearing or things like that. So I kind of have some ideas of what I can let go, but I think the more that I experience and put myself in different situations, I'll learn like, okay, this is something I can actually let go, even though I have an attachment to it. Like there's certain clothes that I brought because they're like comfort clothes, but do I really need them? No. They're pretty big. They take up a lot of space. I could probably get rid of them. But it'll also be interesting to see, you know, I have that part of me that tells me or knows, that intuitive self, like you don't need a bunch of this shit. But I wonder if my mind will allow myself to like actually get rid of them, because I can say all this stuff and am I actually going to act on it? We'll see.
It's probably, I think it's also like, you know, if you have a lot of stuff, like for example, right now when we're traveling overseas, and just ask the family to just ditch everything. Just fucking throw it away. Like, sell it. I don't need it. Like, when I'm coming back, or when you come back, you just want to, like, you want to be sort of, I don't know, sounds weird, but like free from the past, like something that used to be your version of you. But then you're coming back as a new version, and it's sort of like maybe stepping into the old version of yourself because you have this stuff laying around.
Totally.
Which is sort of like, you know, maybe ruining a little bit of the strengthening or like the development or your new character or your new person. So I think that would be really nice to sort of, you know.
That sparks a thought in me. There's been certain times in my life where I feel super low and kind of really stuck, and you know the water just isn't really moving. And you know, to remove some of those blockades to get the river flowing again, I've used, you know, changing my surroundings. Like in my room, I'll reorganize my room, or you know, I'll change it around. I'll sleep on this side now, and then that kind of will be able to support the transition into a new self, or kind of shedding layers. And as you were saying that, I was thinking of kind of the comfort that we've been talking about, in that zone of comfort and being home and having all these familiarities that kind of keep us in that sense of comfort. And I think materially having, you know, certain things from home, like these comfort pants or hoodie that I have, I think that itself is a way for me to bring home with me to maybe stay in that comfort instead of, you know, shedding those layers as well.
That makes sense. I'm trying to figure out the best final question for this interview. So we talked a little bit about.
I have one.
Yeah. Okay.
Who are you?
Do you want me to ask you who you are?
If you're okay with answering first, and then I'll answer.
Who am I? It's interesting to get a
Yeah.
question back. Actually, usually I'm the one who's asking the questions. Do you want a short version or a long version?
That's up to you. That's what I like about this question is you can
Yeah.
ask it, and it doesn't have any bounds for people to answer through.
I would probably describe myself like who I am. I would say that I'm a caring, ambitious, social, including extrovert, a little bit crazy, petrol nerd, and creative person with a big heart that cares for other people. And I have quite a big, like, I wouldn't say urge, but I have a lot of, like, passion for life, and I have a passion for sort of understanding other people and sort of, gain more insight when it comes to how people are living their lives and what's there for us to actually see, because there's so much in this world that we can explore and see, and a lot of people that we can meet, and I don't want to die like only seeing like a small percentage of it.
Yeah.
And I'm also like really curious when it comes to similar to this pretty much, like understanding people's stories and sharing them to sort of awaken some sort of emotion in other people. And I have hard times when it comes to commitment, like commitment issues. I've always struggled with sort of giving up the freedom of being by yourself and being single, to invest or like decide to go for a relationship with someone that you really want to be with. I don't have too much of a self-love feeling, like I'm trying to increase that self-love thing, because you're always critical about the small things that you may be able to improve, instead of seeing the things that that you're actually good at, that you're actually adding to the table.
Yeah.
So, except that I'm a person that likes to take it easy, even though like with my ADHD, my impulses, stuff like that, I really enjoy stuff like this. Being able to have a genuine good conversation, having a good coffee, watching the views, having a swim, just stopping by the side of the road, putting out my camp chair and just, being there present.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's also something that I've learned throughout the years, that, less talking, more action. Because back in the days when I was younger, I tended to like sort of like say, I'm gonna do this, but I ended up not doing it.
Yeah.
So now I'm trying to do the opposite way, at least a little bit more, like, okay, well, I have a goal that I want to do something, then I will try to do it before I talk about it too much.
Yeah.
Because people will always have opinions.
Think yourself out of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's probably like a quite scaled off version of who I am.
Cool. Yeah.
In a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
What about you?
That's great. Yeah.
Who are you, Owen?
I don't know. This answer always changes. Yeah.
Who are you today?
Who am I today?
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I find like I can tell you my passions, or I can tell you like the qualities of the person who I am, but I find it very difficult for many people, including myself, to actually capture the essence of who you really are. Like, I love something, or I'm capturing the love of something rather than the person who loves it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I gotcha.
So I've kind of, I guess, grasped onto an analogy to possibly capture that, but it's a very like general analogy of, I feel like I'm an instrument that is played by the universe, and I guess I'm made up of all these different instruments that maybe don't like to be played or are super rusty and need to be cleaned out. But I guess that there is this essence of me that is really musical and really wants to sing, really wants to play for other people and also myself. And I guess the essence of who I am today is a person trying to clean out those instruments, figure out what's wrong with them, and to learn how to really allow the air to flow properly. Yeah.
To hear the music playing loudly and clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also like, first of all, thank you for sharing, but I think it's also like, when you talk about the instruments, like there doesn't really have to be anything wrong with them. Like you say, it can be some small adjustments, or they can something that can be improved about the instrument itself. Because I think a lot of the time, like I talked before as well, it's like, we don't really see our qualities all the time. I think like we see ourselves and we see the small dots of failure, the small dots of improvement that can be done, rather than seeing the whole big picture of who we actually are and all the good things that we add to the table and that we have done throughout life. Like, everybody's doing mistakes. Everybody's acting good and bad. It's like a part of human being nature. But I would also say, like, we gotta sort of see, like, the love that we truly deserve to give to ourselves. Because if we can't find that, then it's going to be hard to attract someone that will appreciate that from us as well.
Totally. Yeah.
I'm just going to give
like
you a heads
that.
up. We have 3 minutes left on this one.
Okay.
Just so you know.
Well, how should we finish it off then?
Good question. How are you feeling today?
I feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's been interesting the past while. I feel like I'm in a state where, my head up here just isn't really, like, there's not a whole lot that's been going on.
Isn't that good though?
It is good. It is good. But it's also interesting because that part of me, is a source of passion, a source of drive or kind of intellect. And so it's nice, it's calm, and I feel like I'm speaking just from the heart. Like I don't have to analyze or process what I'm speaking, and sometimes I still will. But most of the time it just feels like I'm here, which is very soothing, but it's also like very new. And so I was journaling early, like this is a new state for me, I've worked really hard to get here. And I feel like a baby. So, everything's super new.
Yeah.
Like this couch is new.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at it the same way as I have before.
Yeah.
So I feel
Grounded.
vulnerable.
Yeah.
I feel sensitive, and I feel curious, and also fearful. Yeah, not
really
not
good
very
answer.
Surface level fear.
Yeah.
But I can notice the subconscious fears that are driving me.
I think that's really interesting as well. Unfortunately, we sort of soon got to stop this interview, but I would just want to say that I can relate to the feeling of, because I have a tendency to always overanalyze everything. And being back a year ago or something like that, I was constantly in my brain, in my thoughts all the time, just on and on and on, and I wasn't really able to be present. I felt like I was here, but I wasn't here.
Yeah.
I just felt like a shell walking
feeling.
around.
Yeah.
I was like, I just want to be present, and I can relate to the feeling that you talk about, and I think that's like the beauty of keep pushing it even though it's hard sometimes,
Yeah.
because as we are a proof of now, like the outcome, but after pushing through is something beautiful and something to be proud of.
Yeah, growth. Yeah.
So with that said, I think we sort of need to summarize this interview, but I'm really thankful that you joined us for the interviews, and hopefully I will keep you updated and see what you are up to as well.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing people's stories. I think a lot of beautiful stories go unheard, and I think everyone's stories has a lesson to learn, even though it's maybe very similar to one that you've heard before.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's always new ways of hearing things. So
thank you so much. That means a lot for me to hear. Give me a little bit of goosebumps.
Oh, awesome.
All right. Thank you, brother.
Yeah,
Give me a hug.
No problem. For sure, man.